Hey everybody, it's Sunday, June 1st, 2014. Hope you're having a great day. Half of the year has gone by already. Can you believe it? And I want you to take a moment, think back on where you were 6 months ago. If you don't have a store, which I know there's a lot of you because every time I get an email opt-in, there is a survey that you fill out, and probably half of the people that listen to this podcast are still trying to find an idea or finding a business model to get started. So my point is, if you've been with me here for a while, why haven't you started yet? It's been 6 months out of the year. Why are you just sitting around? And, half the year has gone by. How much longer are you going to wait to start? And there's never a perfect time for anything. And once you start, there's actually a million, billion other things that you must scale up to. All right, so take a few moments, think about that, and hope you get started with this year, and hope you have a business that's really successful, and maybe I'll have you on the podcast in the future. Now, if you have a store, how have your sales grown? What have you done to make things better? What's worked out this year and what hasn't? Most importantly, what are you doing the next 6 months to make things even better? Something to think about as June hits us all today. So my guest today is Nick Ramil, who I actually met a year ago while I was visiting my supplier in China. We had a mutual friend through the DC, also a former podcast guest, Ryan Beltran over at Original Grain. And so I hung out with Nick about a year ago. We had some Mexican food in southern China, actually at an Irish bar. And around then he was launching a watch company called Lexell off Kickstarter. He's been doing import-export sourcing in China for a couple of years. And it was just interesting to be in different circles, visiting what he's doing, talking to his friends. And one thing you notice that when you hang around different social circles, each group will have their own terms. So if you work in politics, they'll talk about bills, legislations, campaigns. If you work in finance, they'll talk about markets, stocks, bonds, interest rates, etc. And what was funny was that hanging out with Nick and his crowd, they were talking about sourcing, they were talking about shipping crates, import exports, and much more. And the gossip that naturally comes from these conversations is very different. And I remember Nick over dinner, they were talking about, who's this guy that imported 6 containers of wine last week? I heard it was from California. We need to find out who this guy was. And I guess it's not that much different from, say, a bunch of bros in California wearing oversized sports jerseys, on a barbecue talking about their favorite sports team. But, either way, I've known Nick for a while and a number of businesses he has out there. So today we're going to just bounce around different topics, talk about sourcing in China, Kickstarter, and, finding business ideas through a concept called a Rip, Pivot, and Jam, which you have probably heard of many times on this podcast. And if you're based in the US, I'm looking to host our first live event, September 28th, Sunday, piggybacking off one of Ezra Firestone's events. He's doing a small conference in Austin, Texas. Good friend of the show. I'll be going to his event, so hopefully you guys can make it. If you want more information about this event, how to get tickets, go to buildmyonlinestore.com, click on the Mastermind tab, join the mailing list there, and I'll keep you posted with more information in late June once I hammer out some more details. All right, thanks. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Don't deliver a product, deliver an experience. You're listening to the Build My Online Store podcast, and I'm your host, Terry Lin. We're here to talk about running an online store and building a strong e-commerce brand to take your online store to the next level. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to check us out at buildmyonlinestore.com. Let's get on with the show. Today, I've got my buddy Nick over in Guangzhou, China. What's going on, Nick?
What's going on, Terry? Thanks for having me, man. Excited to be on this.
Yeah, thanks for having me on your show, Elevator Live, too. A super cool one about manufacturing in China and getting kind of bootstrapping there as an entrepreneur. But just to kick things off, who are you and what do you do?
Absolutely. My name is Nick Ramil, serial entrepreneur, so involved with importing into China, product development, also run a blog on business in China, and a private mastermind group for business in China as well.
All right, we had our previous guest, Ryan Beltran, over at Original Grain, and that's kind of how I first met him and met you first. So what's the story behind that, and how did you guys end up in China?
Yeah, really. We've been in China since 2010, and Ryan Beltran got in touch with me through a family friend, actually through my cousin in 2011. And he wanted to come over to China and kind of see what was going on here. So he was really our first protege, if you will, of the entrepreneurial world here in China. And he really just fit in really well with the group. And we just got to show him that entrepreneurial lifestyle, and he loved it. And, from there, he just decided, I'm going to jump into this as well. And he's really capitalized on it. And it's been incredible to see his growth as an entrepreneur and an individual as well. And, I was talking to him this morning. We talk multiple times a week, and it was simply just a matter of chance that connected us. But now, now we're best of friends, and he'll actually be over here in about 2 weeks. I'm meeting him in Hong Kong. So, we linked up through family, and now, we're We're just a few buddies trying to take over this entrepreneurial world in China.
How did you end up in China in the first place?
After graduation, we really didn't want to go to the corporate route. We kind of wanted to build our own value and make our own future. And China was and is the most exciting place to be right now for an entrepreneur. The growth here domestically and the opportunities available internationally, such as crowdfunding, product development. It just really felt like a good place to set up home base. It hasn't let us down so far. We believe there's exponential growth here in China compared to other places and other opportunities that you can find globally. So we thought, we'll just pack up our bags after graduating from uni and move to China, and been here ever since.
So what did you guys do at first then, while you were figuring out the whole product side of the business?
First, as English teachers, that's kind of how a lot of people make the transition. You get invited over by a school, and they'll give you good hours, and you can kind of make your own schedule. Of course, we did it the wrong way, and we got a pretty short end of the stick, if you will. But pretty much, you come over and we do part-time teaching. And then, in the off time, maybe an afternoon or 3 or 4 days a week, you can be focused on building your business. And living costs are very low here. You're making relatively low income on an international level, but in China, it's more than enough to sustain a comfortable lifestyle while saving a little bit to, provide funds for your bootstrapped company.
Gotcha. And so what did you guys do starting out while you were teaching English?
To be honest, the first 6 months, we were just trying to survive. China, as you know, is a very different place than the rest of the world. It beats to its own drum, and that's what makes it, one, so exciting, but also a very difficult place to thrive and survive. So what we did was we were teaching for the first 6 months, and then we realized, Guangzhou is really the manufacturing hub of China. Do a lot of sourcing projects, and you can kind of connect the dots from manufacturers to consumers or customers back to in your home country, for us, which was the United States. So what we did was started doing little sourcing projects here and there. Some people would need something for their restaurant, or maybe someone needed, advertising products like pens or T-shirts, something really easy, simple to do products that we had access to here down in southern China. And we thought it would be easy. And again, it was a steep learning curve for that business model, but we slowly but surely kind of made the transition from teaching to teaching part-time more into pretty much doing sourcing projects for other companies and, friends and family back home. Just really, it's important to hammer your network back home. And, I live in China. What do you need? I can get it for you. That was really the approach we took that kind of started down our entrepreneurial path.
So a lot of hustle to get kind of business here and there to get everything rolling up on the ground.
Oh man, all it is the hustle day in, day out. It's been almost 5 years, and the same hunger, the same hustle amount, just every day, just trying to build more and more value for ourselves.
Yeah, awesome. And so what's the transition like from being sourcing agent to building your own brand at Lexell? Because I know, a lot of people kind of do the agency side of business, but they never make the transition into brand owner. So why did you guys do that?
Well, real quick, we did that because we felt, there's nothing more valuable than building a personal brand or your own brand. We recognize that on our blog with the elevator life of building a personal brand. And then, really the goal is to have your own product, and then, you can dictate the price, the channels it goes through, how you sell it. You have to develop the know-how with sourcing. It's not like you just show up in a factory and it's 1, 2, 3, and there's basic how-to steps. It's a very time-consuming process to learn how to properly source, and this very well too. Quality control, working with factories is not something you can learn overnight. So after you learn really the processes and ins and outs of sourcing and how manufacturing works, then what you go ahead and do is, what we believe is jump in and start building your own brand. So then you start to build your own value. And we think there's nothing more valuable than that.
Yeah, because from some other people I've talked to, like people that play the agency business, like it's really dependent on both sides of the equation, right? Like you need to balance the factory and your customers, your client side, and it becomes a big hassle, like when projects get really big.
Yeah, exactly. And then again, it's kind of more like you're working for the customer, or you're working for the factory. You're kind of split between the two if you're in the broker kind of agent role. But once you break off and break into your own brand, then it's your company and your brand brand and you're working directly with factories. So then there's a lot more freedom. Then you're much more dependent on yourself. It's up to you and the decisions you make, and how much work you put into it is how much you can really get out of it.
Gotcha. And so how did you guys end up making stone watches over at Lexell?
Stone watches started because, as we just discussed, Ryan, one of our very good friends, he was doing wood watches. Natural products are very on the front end of the trends right now. Wood has been there for a few years. We thought, after wood, what's next? And we hadn't seen anyone on the market with stone. And we looked into it, and a lot of people said it was too difficult or not reasonable or too cost intensive to cut the stone down. But we thought if we could be the first ones to do it, we would definitely kind of carve out our own niche, and we would be successful because we have access to all the resources and all the factories that we need to complete the project. And when we did stone, after kind of testing the viability with some friends, or asking our other entrepreneurial friends, hey, what do you think of this moving into this niche market, there was a very good reaction to it. So we said, all right, let's go ahead and see if we can do it.
And how did you gauge the reaction? Because people always say, the best reaction is when someone gives you the credit cards. How did you guys process that feedback starting out?
Well, first and foremost, we had to see if there was the interest. So we started posting it in some of our entrepreneurial forums. We started, again, asking other like-minded entrepreneurs, and even going to bigger corporate brands and bigger players in the watch game, and then asking, have you seen this? Have you heard about this? Do you think there'd be a niche for that? And there was a yes. So they said, all right, let's go ahead and see if we can develop it. We were really confident in the fact that we knew if we developed a product we wear personally, there'd be consumers out there who would also be willing to make that purchase. And then, of course, the best place to validate your idea after you have it produced would be a crowdfunding site, Kickstarter, Indiegogo. That is the number one gift to entrepreneurs today, in our opinion, is the ability to really test your product before you have to make the investment in inventory. Because you can take a couple $1,000, get your exact model or prototype made, have some photos taken, come up with a pitch, and then if you put it on Kickstarter, that is really how you validate your product, or that will tell you, what, no one is interested in this.
How much did you guys spend on your first samples of the watches? Because watches aren't really cheap to get samples made or get the parts. And if so how did you guys do that starting out?
All in for Lexell, it was about $6,000, give or take, getting the molds made, sourcing all the materials. And I mean, this includes all of our trips to the factories. We did it very, very lean because, we think that's obviously the best business model you can do. After spending that money, we then put it up on our crowdfunding site, on our Kickstarter page, and it was pretty much an instant success. We reached our goal in 2 hours, and then we went far beyond it, which we were very excited about. That really told us, okay, this is going somewhere. So then obviously once the Kickstarter funds were released, we were able to start production. But also because we have our import business with wine, we were able to get the initial capital we needed, and also some of the production capital to start earlier before the campaign ended, into pretty much to the factories. So then they were able to start our production.
Very cool. And so what did you guys do for Kickstarter outreach? Because I know a lot of people just put the page up, and it's a lot of groundwork to get PR, press, and friends to share. So what did you guys do kind of before the launch or the day of the launch to get everything set in the first 2 hours?
One of the things we learned, actually, and we can discuss this a little more as well, was even the months leading up to our campaign, reaching out to friends, reaching out to family. I mean, really to the deepest, darkest corners of your network, you would just kind of reach out, let them know you're starting a project, or maybe let them know you're thinking about launching a product, just kind of creating a buzz around it. And then we would, obviously it's really important to get your social media all set up, in every outlet, your Tumblr, your Twitter. And then from there, it was a month before, then 2 weeks before, kind of priming the network a little more. A week before, then you'd start kind of building up those social media channels, reaching out again to the network. And then day of launch, it was really just 24 hours of running through everybody you've already contacted and letting them know it's up on Facebook for asking for shares, on Twitter asking for retweets and everything like that. And that was really the initial push because our networks have been primed. That was the initial push. Those first 2 or 3 days, it just spread all over all of our networks. I have a few business partners, and we have mutual networks and then outside networks. So overall, it was we got some great exposure through, again, just like you said, groundwork.
And when you say priming your network, are you like, as far as like one person getting like touched from you guys, is it like 3 times or kind of like 5 times, or are you saying like?
Yeah, for us, I mean, for example, I would reach out to a friend of mine on Facebook or via email, whatever channel you want to use, and let them know, hey, just want to let you know, product I'm launching, take a look. I'd be curious to know what you think. When it gets closer to the launch, hey, we're planning to launch this next week. I'd really appreciate it if you could, help support, even just a share or like on Facebook. Those go really far, And then from there, day of, it was, here's our link to our campaign. Could you please help us share, give it a like, a tweet, whatever, to pretty much help your network, see this is something we're started. And Kickstarter is all about eyeballs. Rule number 1 is get every single eyeball you can get on your campaign, get it there, regardless of their background, how you know them, anybody seeing your campaign is a good thing, and it's a numbers game. The more people who see it, again, the odds are you'll have more conversions.
So it's not just like, hey, we're launched, check out our page. It's like a long process of kind of priming them. Because I think a lot of people do what I just said. They just go, hey, I launched a Kickstarter, share it. But you're like, who are you? Like, I haven't talked to you in like 10 years. Why are you sending me this?
Exactly. I can't even tell you the amount of I did as well as I could, but the amount of those kind of awkward small talk Facebook conversations I had to have, leading up to launch were countless. But again, it's much better than just, like you said, oh, hey, by the way, here's my campaign, I'm launching it. You have to let everybody know. You have to warm up to it, and it's definitely something that pays dividends, because the fact that you've had a few conversations leading up to it is not just, hey, can you do me this favor? You've at least built it up a little bit, and that's definitely important when you're asking for a favor.
So one thing you mentioned when we met up in person a couple of weeks ago, you were saying how you guys had a Kickstarter that ended in early December. And there were kind of some chargebacks or issues with the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Can you go into some detail about that?
Absolutely. Timing is everything for Kickstarter. What we failed to realize was we launched our campaign towards the end of the year, and we had to compete with Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and then, of course, products being delivered by Christmas, or people wanting to buy a watch as a gift for a Christmas gift, and we simply couldn't do that. Our production time was too limited, and we wanted to be able to meet the Christmas deadline. We didn't want to tell people we could, so we absolutely had a lot of cancellations and again, chargebacks, because of the fact people realized they overextended themselves on Kickstarter buying a watch, and then Christmas season came around and all the big sales, and they ended up picking up gifts or picking up other things they needed for the season, and saying, we really support you, but kind of spent too much on Black Friday, or I got a new TV on Cyber Monday, and simply the funds that they had for the watch had been used for another product, and that was something that we realized we definitely need to plan for next time. So, the timing is very important, and you don't want to launch a campaign, around any major holidays. I mean, even thinking about, for example, July 4th coming up, if with that weekend coming around, a lot of people will be off with families or out camping. You have to take all this into account for when you launch your campaign, or if it's in the middle of your campaign, because there's definitely lower times of activity on Kickstarter, or also lower times of people can commit the funds to it than others. So you definitely have to be aware of those times.
So it sounds like a lot of the Kickstarter people aren't people with like spare cash thing, because I always thought it was just like people that had couple extra bucks, wanted to invest in here and there, support someone. But I guess it turns out that's not the case. Huh?
Yeah, our watches we were between $100 and $200, and some people would pick up two or three and then realize, oh shoot, I just spent $500 on three watches. Do I need that, or should I spend that same money on Christmas gifts for my wife or my kids or what have you? So obviously we lost out on the battle for the guy who'd want a few watches or the gifts or the family. So that's something we realized we don't want to compete at that time anymore.
Yeah, hashtag consumerism. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so one thing I noticed about your Kickstarter campaign is that you guys only set the initial goal of 15,000. Why that number? Was that enough to kind of get started, or what was the rationale behind that?
Setting the goal of 15,000 was just we wanted to simply validate. For us, we wanted and expected much more based off the market research we've done for watches on Kickstarter. But again, you never want to set your ambitions, or you never want to set them too high. And again, 15,000 was just, okay, if that's all we received, it would have been, okay, people were interested. Now, how do we get it on a broader scale? Maybe there's only had a couple hundred eyeballs on it. Maybe, we didn't get the proper media exposure. Again, it's a numbers game. So the whole thing was maybe that we just didn't do what we were supposed to do. We expected to do much more, but that was just, if we reach this number, we'll be able to get it start, but we'll take it much further than that.
Yeah, and there's a numbers game too, where if you look at how much you guys raised, like 220,000 versus a 15,000 goal, rather than if you set the goal at 200,000, you only beat it by like 20K.
Exactly.
There's an expectations thing there too.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And setting your goal, anything above 100,000 is very ambitious. We feel, and then we love the ambition, but also, if you don't meet your goal, of course, then you don't receive the funds, and that's not something we wanted to deal with. If you were short by 1,000 or 2,000, that'd be a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah, exactly. All right, and so after the Kickstarter, you guys have all the sourcing experience, getting stuff out. What's kind of the future for Lexell right now?
Yeah, right now, Lexell, we have our e-commerce shop up, and we're doing well with sales on this channel. And then what our plan now is to go ahead and kind of kick it up a notch to a more premium level watch. Lexell is a great watch and a great value watch, but we want to kind of target more of a higher end premium consumers. So our next Kickstarter, which we'll be launching next month, is going to be. What I can tell you right now is we've stepped everything up, from the stone we use to the movement to the leather bands we're using to the clasp, to the sapphire glass, everything like that. We're taking it to the next level, and because we've seen a good amount of demand in our watches now, the watch line we have now and the price point. But people also have been asking, what's coming next, and obviously we feel the next market we want to penetrate is more of a middle to high one. The consumers in this range will be able to purchase these watches without having to, think twice about it, which is the consumers we want to position ourselves with.
Yeah, so in terms of price points, how would that be different from Lexell? Because I think Lexell is like 150, 200. Are we looking at 500 plus, 1,000 plus?
Yeah, we're still settling down on the pricing. We don't want to go to the ultra premium to start, but absolutely probably between I want to say between the $300 and $600 range, somewhere in there. We haven't settled down yet exactly, because we're still working out all the costs, sourcing the materials. But all in, it's definitely going to be a next level watch. I don't know whether it's going to be, as I said, the premium level, but we're definitely taking it up another level or two.
Yeah, and so what does the watch market look like in terms of like different price points? 'Cause I know like on the high end you have like a Patek Philippe or something that's like 10K, but what does it look like say from like 20 to 100, 100, 200, 300 to 500? Because I remember you mentioned you tested some different pricing points for Lexell, and you learned different things, right? So what were kind of the things you learned there?
Yeah, well, what we really learned is the market from, let's say, 100 to 200, it's definitely segmented. And let's put it at 250 and below to start, and that's definitely going to be your entry level watch. And then anything where you're looking at about 400 or 500 and above is going to be your middle to high tier. From 500, you really just make that jump to 1,000 and above. And that's when you're at your premium market. We want to step up from the entry level to the mid level, and eventually it'd be great to make it to that premium market. But right now we're focused on taking it just up one more to that mid level market.
Gotcha. And so how did you find out that there were these different segments?
For us, what it's been a lot of, again, is doing a lot of market research, looking at brands that we would like to say are our competitors. Not saying they are, because they're much larger. But for example, I mean, if you look at a Nixon, one of the biggest brands in the world, or you look at a Fossil, they have their brand kind of segmented in certain markets. And then you can, as we said, jumping like to that middle market, then you get into some designer brands, Armani's definitely in that kind of middle to higher market as an example of a brand. And then if you go up to the top, then you're looking at the Tag Heuers and the Rolexes and the Hublots of the world. If you look at these brands and where they position themselves, you'll notice the price points also kind of sync up based on the market they're trying to penetrate. Like everything, with all sales, you have to know your market. And the beauty of e-commerce is being able to kind of play around and figure out your sweet spot. And of course, it depends on what you're offering and the sales and the promotions and your marketing. But all in, you're able to play around with and see exactly which market you fit into for your product.
Gotcha. Yeah, it reminds me of the car market where you have like Toyota, General Motors, Ford battling like kind of the mass market, but then you move up, you have like Audi, BMW, and then you go up, you have like your Rolls Royce, your Bentleys, and like you go up even more, there's like Lamborghinis, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a perfect example. You have your entry level where that's going to be the greater majority of the market. Then you step it up a level, to those Audi, BMW, Lexus, Mercedes of the world, where it's definitely a step up, but not the biggest step. And then, like you just said, the Lamborghinis and the Rolls Royces are the premium level. The majority can't access it, and it's definitely more exclusive. You have to find your competitive advantage and what's unique, and what the market's willing to pay for it.
Yeah. So how are you guys planning to find these guys that can buy, like, say, a $500 watch?
For us, the most important thing has been branding and our marketing, making sure we position ourselves both through what we associate ourselves with in regards to the brand and our competitors is going to be positioning ourselves where we believe we fit in the market based off, again, our competition. You're able to learn a lot off of the other brands who are out there, and what they're marketing at and how they're marketing to them, and you can adjust and tailor your own strategy for how to penetrate that niche and penetrate that brand. Especially if you're bringing something new to the market, you can carve out your nice own little niche there, as long as more or less a level playing field, the people you want to be competing with.
Yeah, so you brought up something interesting, finding your niche within products. So what are your thoughts on that, since you have a sourcing background? Because, like, say, I want to make fans or chairs, but how would you make something like that stand out from the market? Or what is your philosophy on that?
When you're looking to kind of disrupt a market or find a niche, I really think the best way to do it is, Dan's motto, Dan Andrews, is the whole rip, pivot, jam idea. For me, I really love that business model because you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to come out with the next greatest tech development or the next greatest watch. For me, I love the approach of seeing something that's being successful in the market, taking it and pivoting it just a little bit to make it your own, whether you're slightly improving it in your opinion, or slightly just changing it or adjusting it a little bit, and then reintroducing it to the market your own way. And again, making that niche, that's the beauty of branding, marketing, and advertising today. You can line up your product with whatever lifestyle you want, or with whatever demographic you want. It's completely up to you. You just have to decide what that is, and hopefully it's the best choice. And if not, you can always reposition yourself. And that's something that's great about the world today as well. If you thought, say, demographic A was going to be your main consumers, but it turns out demographic B is actually the better target market for you, it's easy for you to, again, change and tailor, reposition, retailor your marketing and positioning plan, and start to make inroads into that market.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because on my own store, Baller Leather, most of my sales has actually been coming from women, even though the wallets are for men. So it turns out it's actually wives buying the wallets for the husbands, not husbands. But like, there's been a few guys buying it, but by far, probably like 60% is like women buying it for their boyfriends or husbands. So I think like marketing wise, like I've been leaning towards that too because I think women tend to buy more online, at least in the past few years, and kind of it's something I didn't realize until, like you said, until you start doing it.
Yeah, you really aren't going to know, until you try, trial by error. And Branson's famous motto, "Screw it, let's do it." You just really have to get in there and figure out what works and what doesn't, because every product is unique. Every business has problems to solve. Whether you have the best product and not enough eyeballs, or maybe you have, a ton of exposure, but your product just isn't doing it for the people getting to your website, or the consumers who are thinking about buying it but never actually check out with their cart and your product with your product in their cart. So you have to get out there and really figure out, how do I position this to be most successful? And the thing is, it's always changing because you're always having new competitors. That whole kind of idea of just kind of sitting back and passively building a brand once you've launched, I don't think that's a reality. I think there's steady growth. But if you really want to take it to that next level, you have to be very active in developing your brand and making sure you stay on top and stay with, or if possible, in front of the trends, to make sure that you're always on the front lines of the innovation.
So what are some ways you look at trends and making sure that you're staying ahead of the front lines?
In regards to Lexell or any of the product development we've seen, we look at what's been thriving in the marketplace, or what's been doing well, and we look at a way it can be improved. We look at how we believe we can make it better. And of course, being based in China, a lot of the trade shows here that we attend are all of the latest and greatest products, and we have access to. We go to these shows on a frequent basis and just cruise, spend days, hours. It's exhausting just walking around these shows and seeing, what sticks out to us. What do we think we could take and turn into our own? And again, it's just being aware of what's going on in the market and trying to see where you can improve it. And it should be something you're interested in. We don't want to get into like you just said, the fan game, or maybe like the cup game. Those are harder things to innovate, and probably higher things with barriers to entry. But if you get into something that's a lifestyle or something that you're interested in as an individual, it's much easier to kind of break it down. How can I put my own unique spin on this, to reverse engineer it from your goal of what it is, and then break that down backwards and say, what can I change about this watch from where it is now to where I want to get it? And then you kind of fill in the middle parts.
Yeah, like the high volume, low price point, mass ordered fans or chairs games. I don't want to play that game.
Yeah.
And it's non-recurring orders too.
Yeah, exactly. As long as you're providing a high value product, and you're truly confident in what you're putting out, that really shows through in the craftsmanship and in the customer service and in the dedication you have for the marketing and the advertising. If you're doing all high quality stuff, consumers easily recognize this, and that's been a part of the game forever. From even when I was out 2 nights ago, like going cruising, trying to find a restaurant to eat at, and we couldn't decide. Like we just stopped at the one that had the nicest looking menu and really nice presented photos, and it was like, hey, these people really care about how they're presenting themselves. And we paid a more expensive price, and the food was great, and we were happy with our experience. So it's all about the experience you're providing for that consumer, and I think that's a universal truth across all industries.
Yeah, and I think it's a little details too, especially like e-commerce, like whether it's like a thank you note or kind of the way your website text lines up, or if the photos are all the same size.
There's all these little things that you kind of seem to forget about after your product's been validated, or maybe you don't have the time for it. You'd be surprised how making these little changes or making these new offers, perhaps an anniversary sale, or anything related to where people can say, oh, okay, this person really cares about his product, and we're a big believer in customer service. Just making sure whenever there's a problem, always will be handled. the customer is always right kind of mentality. And that's harder to find in our more interconnected world today. And we pride ourselves on taking care of that. And that's definitely had gotten us a very high referral rate, just word of mouth. And that's those are some of the best consumers.
Gotcha. And so just to wrap things up, you also mentioned you guys are working on a new Kickstarter brand, kind of more high-end products. So what's the story behind this?
Yeah, absolutely. Vachero, which you'll be seeing up on Kickstarter within, I want to say, the next 2 months, is going to be our next level watch. We'll be integrating marble into it. So, stepping it up from the current stones we have now, stepping up our movement to some automatic movement, just really aesthetically making the watch look like it belongs in that higher tier market is what I can tell you right now. I know we're setting up our social media and stuff, and I'll make sure to share all that information with you when I get it. But really, it's just about taking things to the next level, because we've tested out as we said, our mass market watch, and that was a success. And now we think we can penetrate that next tier of consumers based off what we've learned doing our entry-level watch.
Gotcha. All right, very cool. So where can we find you online, Nick?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, you're in my face at the Elevator Life. Latest episodes, you and me. That's our business blog we run. And then if you're curious about business in China, then our private mastermind group, Enter China, www.enterchina.co. We have a free ebook up there where you can read a lot more in depth about what me and my business partners have been able to accomplish in China. And, if you're serious about jumping into China, this is definitely a place you should consider, a community you should consider joining.
Awesome. Very cool. So Nick, thanks a lot for joining us today, and we'll keep in touch.
Absolutely, Terry. Thanks for having me, man. And hopefully see you sooner than later.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Build My Online Store podcast. If you want the show notes, make sure to check out the website at buildmyonlinestore.com. And if you got an e-commerce store, every 2 weeks I lead a live mastermind call with about 5 or 6 of the listeners in 2 separate groups where we work openly together and solve a business problem that you have. And we're all there to support each other. So if this sounds like your cup of tea, make sure to check us out at buildmyonlinestore.com/mastermind. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll catch up with you guys next week.